Welcome to part 3 of Ollie and Odis the tutorial. We're going to be starting off by making a magic ring, and don't worry, I will show it twice, the second time being in slow motion. So you're just going to take your yarn and wrap it around your top 3 fingers, creating an X on one side and 2 parallel lines on the other side. And then you're going to take your crochet hook and go under the first loop, over the second loop, pulling the second loop under, twist your hook like so, and then grab that yarn and pull it through. So I'm going to play it again in slow motion. Now that you have the magic ring done, you are just going to be placing 6 single crochets into this ring. Just make sure you're crocheting over top both the tail and the loop, just like so. And if you still need some help with the magic ring, I have a tutorial linked down below where it'll show this entire process in a little bit more detail. So we're popping in 6 single crochets, making sure we're crocheting over top both the tail and the loop, because here we are going to pull that tail and it's going to close the magic ring. So if you can't pull your ring, something's gone awry, and again, I have a tutorial linked down below for the magic ring if you need some more help with that. And now we are just going to place our first single crochet of the round in this very first stitch here. And we are going to mark that stitch. Place another single crochet. And then increase. So that's 2 single crochets in 1 stitch. Single crochet, single crochet, and increase. That took us from 6 single crochets up to 8. For round 3, we can remove the stitch marker and place our first single crochet of the round. And then mark this stitch. For round 3, all we're doing is 1 single crochet in each stitch around the circle. So just work your way around, placing a single crochet in each one of these 8 stitches. And then remove your stitch marker. Round 4 is the exact same thing that we just did. Place your first single crochet of the round and then mark that stitch. And then single crochet in each stitch around the circle. You will end with a total of 8 stitches in this round as well. And now we can remove our stitch marker. And before we close up the arm, we are going to weave in this tail end. So remember how we did the otter's head? We're doing the exact same thing here. So tighten up the circle, thread your yarn needle, and then all you're going to do is weave in the needle in and out random stitches in the bottom, and just make sure that the end can't come unraveled. I like to trim my tail, but you don't have to. It just makes the next step a little bit easier. So flip your arm right side out again, and then tuck in the tail. We are not stuffing the arm. Instead, we are going to close it shut by single crocheting across both sides of the arm. So you're going to fold your arm in half like this, and you're going to be single crocheting across the entire thing, so across 2 stitches like this. So pop your hook back in the loop, and then single crochet going through both sides of the arm like so. You should be able to fit 4 stitches across, but if you have more or less, it really doesn't matter too much. Just make sure that you're single crocheting across both sides of the arm. Once you've done that, you've got your first arm finished. Now all you have to do is leave a long tail for sewing, about 12 to 15 inches or so. Pull the yarn through the loop to fasten it off. And that is your first arm done. You're going to make 2 of these. Next, we're going to make the ears. So we're going to start off by making a magic ring. Again, if you need help with this, you can either rewatch the beginning of the video, or I've got a separate tutorial link down below. And once you have your magic ring, we are just going to pop in 6 single crochets into it, making sure you're crocheting over top both the tail and the loop. Now that we've got our 6 single crochets, we're just going to close our magic ring. And we are going to pop in our first single crochet of the round, and then we are going to mark that stitch. We're making the ears right now, and the ears only have 2 rounds. So for this next round, all we're doing is a single crochet in each stitch around the circle for a total of 6 stitches. And that's all there is to the ears. So you can remove your stitch marker, and we're going to fasten off by making a slip stitch. So insert your hook in the next available stitch, yarn over, and pull through all the loops on your hook. That's called a slip stitch, and it's just a neat little way of fastening off. And then leave a long tail for sewing and pull your yarn through. So your ears should look something like this. Don't forget to weave in that pesky little tail, and you're going to make 2 of these ears. So last piece in brown is the tail. So again, we're starting with the magic ring. And you're going to make 4 single crochets in this ring. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then pull the ring shut. This one can be a little tricky to work with because your magic ring is really tiny here, so just go slow. You're going to make your first single crochet of the round, and then you are going to mark that stitch. In the next stitch, we are making an increase. And then single crochet. And then increase. So we went from 4 stitches up to 6. So remove your stitch marker for round 3. Round 3, we're going to start off with a single crochet, and then we are going to mark the stitch. Next, we are going to make an increase, and then single crochet, increase, single crochet, increase. So this brought us up to 9 stitches. And then you can remove your stitch marker. And I'm going to weave in my tail now before the tail gets too tight to weave in the end. So just flip it inside out and weave in your end before continuing. I'm going to give my tail a trim just to make it a little bit easier to work with this small piece. And then for round 4, we are just going to be placing 1 single crochet in each one of these stitches. So don't forget to mark your first stitch of round 4, and then carry on with a single crochet in each stitch around. We're going to have 9 stitches at the end of this round. Then for rounds 5 through 8, so for the next 4 rounds, we're doing the exact same thing, just a single crochet in each stitch around. And don't forget to mark the beginning of each round. I'm just going to speed up rounds 5 through 8, and again, that's just 4 more rounds of 9 single crochets. We're coming up on the end of round 8, and we are going to close the tail the exact same way that we did the arms. So grab your hook, do not stuff the tail at all. All you're doing is popping your hook through both sides of the tail, like so, and single crochet through both sides. So just like the arms, I could reach 4 single crochets to close off the tail, but again, it's not too important here. To fasten off, you're just going to leave a long tail for sewing and then pull the yarn through. The last otter piece we have to make is the muzzle, so again, we are doing a magic ring. And if you need help, just rewatch the beginning of the video or the separate tutorial link down below, and pop in 6 single crochets into the magic ring. Next, we are going to close our magic ring, and the muzzle only has 2 rounds, so this is the last round of this piece. You are going to make a single crochet in the first available stitch and then mark that stitch. Next, we are going to make an increase, and then single crochet, increase, single crochet, and lastly, increase. That's it for the muzzle, so we can remove our stitch marker. And we are going to fasten off by making a slip stitch. And then pull your tail nice and tight, leave a tail for sewing, and pull that yarn through. Don't forget to weave in the tail for this piece as well, and then I'm going to show you how to sew everything on. So we're going to start assembling the otter. Your body should look something like that, and we are going to turn it into this. I'm going to start off by sewing the ears on. So you should have 2 ears made, and they are going to go on the top of the head. If you've never sewed before in crochet, it is super simple, so don't stress at all. Just thread your yarn needle with the tail of one of the ears. And I'm going to place mine on the head about 1 or 2 rounds down from the top and directly behind one of the eyes, and pretty centered as well. You can kind of play around with your placement, but I recommend this as a starting point. And all you're going to do to sew it on is insert your needle into a stitch on the body and then insert it onto a stitch in the ear. And then pull really tight so that you don't have any of the darker yarn showing. So again, into the body, into the ear, and pull tight. And just make sure that you keep the ear in place as you sew so that it doesn't move around on you. And just put your needle through every single stitch around the ear, just to make sure everything is nice and secure. So once you have your ear sewed on, all you have to do is take your yarn needle and pull it through to the bottom, and then you can trim off that tail piece. You're going to do the exact same thing on the other side, making sure the ears are symmetrical as you sew. The next piece I'm going to sew on is the muzzle, so take your yarn needle and thread the needle onto the tail. And I trimmed my muzzle tail here to make it easier to sew on, and then I'm just going to kind of shove it into the muzzle and hold it in place as I sew. So the muzzle placement just goes between the eyes, making sure everything is nice and even. And again, you're just poking your needle through 1 stitch of the body and 1 stitch into the muzzle. We are going to sew on the arms next. So I like to sew my arms at an angle like this. You can see there's a bit of a diagonal here. It's not exactly horizontal, but you could do horizontal if you want to. It's totally up to you. I'm going to do mine a little bit diagonal, about 1 stitch behind the eyes. And I'm going to start off by sewing the top exactly where the darker brown yarn starts. Pretty easy to attach the arm because we already crocheted it shut. You're only having to sew through 1 piece and not all the way around in a circle. So I like to go over my arms twice, and then you can weave in the end a little bit if you want, and you're going to trim it off and do the exact same thing for the other side as well. The last piece of sewing is the tail. The tail I'm going to put directly in between both the arms, about 2 rows down from the bottom. So right about there. It's maybe 3 rows away from the bottom. But just kind of play around with how long you want your otter's tail to be. Make sure everything is nice and centered, and then just secure it on. Next, we are going to embroider the nose. So I like to do straight across and then a little bit down. So take the black yarn and thread on a pretty long piece like this. I like to double thread mine. And then you're just gonna pick a spot that's centered in between the eyes and doesn't go all the way across the muzzle. So something like this. And then pull the yarn. And you're just going to go over that, going through the exact same holes a couple times to make the nose more prominent. So you can see I'm going in the exact same holes here. And I'm going in for a second time. Just checking to make sure they're both even. Next, I'm going to go back through that same hole, but down into the bottom of the muzzle in the middle. So just like that. Making sure that is centered. And then I'm going to go back up and pop my needle into where the nose bit is, under the yarn. So taking my needle and poking it in the middle of the nose and out through the top of the head. I'm going to trim the needle off, and then all you're doing here is double knotting all the ends together to make sure everything is nice and secure. I trim mine a little bit and then just shove the ends back into the body. And you're going to do the exact same thing for the other ends that are still hanging off the nose. This next step is totally optional, but your kit does come with 2 little magnets for your otters to be holding hands. They are really tiny, so be careful not to lose them. But you are going to need a hot glue gun if you want to do this next step to make them hold hands. All you're going to do is pop a dot of glue on each of the otter's arms and then pop on the magnet. So grab your hot glue gun and put a little dot right where you want the magnet to go. And then I like to keep my magnets together so that I am making sure that they are facing the right way for them to be holding hands. So as you can see, both the magnets are attached there. Just make sure the dab of hot glue that you put on the arm is pretty small so that it doesn't ooze out over the sides. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing for the otter on the other side. Again, keeping the magnets together so that they're facing the right way. And it just makes life a little bit easier when you're trying to glue it on. My best tip here is to really hold the magnets to the hands while it's drying. And that's just going to make sure the hot glue doesn't come undone. I'm going to clamp it here for a while until it dries. And there you have Ollie and Odis, the hand-holding otters. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please subscribe and comment down below. I hope to see you in next month's Yarny Box.